So wait, you hardly ever use the oral MMS? So wait, you hardly ever use the oral MMS? So wait, you hardly ever use the oral MMS? So wait, you hardly ever use the oral MMS?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're really big on the rectal MMS, but we're cautiously approaching that and look out for reactions. And we insert the Gubarev protocols, which are much milder, a little bit harder to do, but they're a lot milder and often get a huge amount of the job done in one day.
Okay.
The Gubarev protocol, the first one is milk with salt, given rectally, even in people that are highly allergic to milk.
Okay.
But they're allergic when they drink it, not when they take it through the salt.
Okay.
And then it kind of escalates. Then the biggest protocol is when you use freshly steeped eucalyptus leaves, eucalyptus oil in an enema, but they have to hold it for 2 hours.
Oh wow!
It's a fantastic tool, and it's neither pro-oxidant nor antioxidant. It doesn't interfere with any of that. And when we do the MMS enemas, which we do on a lot of kids, we do the enema in the morning because the oxidative challenge, let's put it that way, where you're hoping that it will kick in or activate the antioxidant system in the body. We followed that with the muscle testing. So if you do the MMS enema in the morning, it takes about 4 to 5 hours, and that's when the antioxidative back push comes from the system, and that's when we give our antioxidants. So, that's pretty much.
So wait, you hardly ever use the oral MMS?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're really big on the rectal MMS, but we're cautiously approaching that and look out for reactions. And we insert the Gubarev protocols, which are much milder, a little bit harder to do, but they're a lot milder and often get a huge amount of the job done in one day.
Okay.
The Gubarev protocol, the first one is milk with salt, given rectally, even in people that are highly allergic to milk.
Okay.
But they're allergic when they drink it, not when they take it through the salt.
Okay.
And then it kind of escalates. Then the biggest protocol is when you use freshly steeped eucalyptus leaves, eucalyptus oil in an enema, but they have to hold it for 2 hours.
Oh wow!
It's a fantastic tool, and it's neither pro-oxidant nor antioxidant. It doesn't interfere with any of that. And when we do the MMS enemas, which we do on a lot of kids, we do the enema in the morning because the oxidative challenge, let's put it that way, where you're hoping that it will kick in or activate the antioxidant system in the body. We followed that with the muscle testing. So if you do the MMS enema in the morning, it takes about 4 to 5 hours, and that's when the antioxidative back push comes from the system, and that's when we give our antioxidants. So, that's pretty much, let's say at 8 o'clock in the morning they do the MMS enema. Then about at 2 o'clock they're ready to do antioxidants. So we still give them a full dose of everything, vitamin C, vitamin E, everything, starting at 2 o'clock until bedtime.
Okay.
And it's been working out fantastic, and there's no conflict. And if we do, in a few cases where we have kids on the oral MMS, we try it when it tests, which is about maybe 1 in 4 kids.
Okay.
When it tests well. And that's when we never do the oral MMS past 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It only works for half an hour, the oral one.
Okay.
they can, starting at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they can start taking the antioxidants.
Okay.
And there's absolutely nothing, there's absolutely no conflict. It works beautiful. They don't relapse at night. They don't, whatever gains they make in the day, we don't see the relapse.
So you're answering a lot of my questions, because just the text I sent you about binders and how you said that no, everybody is on chlorella, Zeoclear, which is the only clean form of zeolite that you found, and then microsilica. That was exactly what I suspected, was that people are...
And with that, honestly, we never see the bleeding
right.
That Alex sees.
Right.
But the hyperactive autistic kids, there's no way that we can keep them for the time on the floor. So
right.
the MMS enemas are in a way more practical, easy. You're done in 5 minutes once you have the routine down.
And just to be clear, there is no question that a middle percentage of the population that's doing this protocol is doing unbelievably well in these Facebook groups with the expertise and knowledge of these moms who have been there, done that, and can troubleshoot it. What I have found, however, is that the people who shoot out of the norm, it seems like there's some very simple things that are getting a bit lost once they shoot off the norm. For example, one of the moms has found that these worms, when they're rinsed, are super high in ammonia. And it totally makes sense. So what's happening is they're driving the worms to a point where they're no longer healthy. They're trying to exit away from the enema and the oral CD, but they're coiling up pre-rectum and they're not coming out. And it's basically this ammonia bomb. And I was looking up oxidizers, just trying to figure out from the world of water ecology, all these oxidizers behave very, very differently in the presence of ammonia. So if you have a rectum full of ammonia bombs, parasites, what you enema up there should be very different than when you don't have a rectum full of ammonia, because it's chemically very, very different. And so I'm trying to look into, well, if you know that they're stuck and you know that they're looking like they've got these pissed off worms and it's stuck there and you're pretty clear and you know that it's stuck there, you potentially have to approach what you're enemaing in very differently based on its reaction with ammonia. And the other piece of that, and I'm wondering if when they're doing the Kalker parasite protocol, which as written appears to be unbelievably powerful, no question about it, powerful in so much that it definitely gets these degraded worms to start to try to exit the body through the rectum. And a lot of these kids' challenge becomes getting them all the way out. So here's this high ammonia level. Well, one of the moms who's doing a super high level of CD, higher than most people, and having a ton of worms come out, I realized is also doing turmeric at night. And turmeric, in addition to being just this fabulous antioxidant, will switch the cycle to where you get BH4 to handle the ammonia. So she's potentially loading her BH4, pool to handle the excess ammonia. So that's one big thing that I think all these kids should probably be on a really good quality turmeric with the piperin at night to preload that BH4 handle.
I designed a product for BioPure. It's called CoQ10.
Okay.
That has not only the best source of curcumin, so
okay,
the turmeric, concentrate,
right,
and the pepper in it, but also very, very bioactive form of ginger.
Okay.
Ginger is a fantastic anti-helmintic, anti-worm drug.
Okay.
And so we use that, orally with the kids that can swallow it, but we also put it in the enemas regularly.
Okay.
But I never knew why it was testing so well, but that would make sense.
Totally.
That would handle, this one capsule, you put that in with the different enemas that we do, coffee enemas,
okay,
MMS enemas, and with the Google Ref protocols, you always put a capsule of the CoQ10 in there as a gunshot approach to the wormies.
Well, and
then
Okay.
And he's very well known in the parasite world, and he does EAV testing, and he got a number of medical worm drugs. And this is actually, so I pretty much have used for a long time all the medical worm drugs. You remember the Alenia and the Dilticide.
Can you spell that out, exactly what you're doing? Because on you is like Dana, people are begging for the systemic protocol after they get some of the basic pathogen burden under control. They want to know, what would Dietrich have them do with the systemic?
I can have Christine send you the protocol, because it's something we do every day. Now we vary a little bit, but I also have on my website, I know it's called the Klinghardt protocols.
Okay.
And all the worm drugs are the exact dosages and how often and how long to use on there.
Okay.
But I will ask Christine to send you what she has in forms of the protocols. Yeah, it's just every 2 weeks you change. You start with these two things, and then another two, and then another two, and then another two. But lately, it's become, on the internet, you have to source it's cheaper to buy these things in a Canadian pharmacy than to actually pay your copay on the American insurances. The copay for the worm drugs tends to be more expensive than buying the thing cash in Canada. Like, the copay, like for Dilticide for 3 weeks worth, maybe $300, buying the whole lot, in Canada or Key Pharmacy, maybe $100.
Right.
Because the pharmacy actually charges like $3,000 for it. There's these insane prices, and for me, people just source it. And lately, people came up with a new dewormer that's used for horses and cows.
Okay.
It's called fenbendazole.
Okay.
There's albendazole, there's mebendazole, Karka's protocol, which is the weakest of all the drugs.
Right.
Which I don't know why he's using the weakest of everything that's available.
I think they're trying to make sure that everything goes from mouth to anus and doesn't get absorbed. They're trying to.
No, but the problem is that especially in the autistic kids, really the core piece of this whole issue is the larval stages of the parasites in the brain. And there's only 2 drugs currently known to cross the blood-brain barrier in the literature that's human consumption. That's albendazole or albenza, which you can get in Mexico cheaply over the counter.
Okay.
And Alenia, which in Mexico is called Daxon, and you can get it over the counter there too.
Okay.
And those are the ultimate last strokes here. So we clean up the gut, then we clean up the body, with the regular worm drugs that don't cross the blood-brain barrier, like Karka's mebendazole or ivermectin.
Right.
And then when there's no more die-off effect there, then we go to the drugs that clean out the central nervous system. And that's of course when all hell breaks loose, but when you do it in that sequence, things are mild. So the die-off effects are mild. We used to get seizures and things. And I was very grateful for the lecture we got on the cannabis. I think since then that stuff is just absolutely sacred, wonderful, because we opened the connections in Washington. That's just wonderful what we see when kids take it.
Right.
But anyway, so the last step is to clean up the brain. That's when the miracles happen after this with the die-off effect. And this new drug that people can buy, like a tube that's like a month's supply for $12. It's almost as inexpensive as MMS. This is at least a month's supply. For a grown-up, that's a month's supply. That's all you ever need. It's like $12.
And what's that one called?
The generic name is fenbendazole.
Okay. Okay.
So the secret is this: also crosses the blood-brain barrier. It's still cheap, but it's not proof for human use because it's that good.
Okay.
They treat the $40 million racehorses with it, and believe me, they've done more research on this for the safety than they do ever in any human study.
Absolutely.
Because the human human life in the military is valued as $200,000,
Oh my God.
and so these racehorses are up to $40 million or more. And that's, they did the research to make sure that they're doing fine with it. The people that can't afford the medical drugs, and so far it looks fantastic. That there's just a new simple way. They go to the feed store, the animal feed store, to buy the stuff. Nobody asks questions.
Right.
It's a sweet tasting taste. Kids love it. They can take it, and they get the biggest whack.
What's the dosing per kilogram that people are?
I don't know.
Okay.
We're still working on that.
Okay.
So far we're working off the same dosing as we did. The bendazole as albendazole and itraconazole, and fluconazole. They're all the same lineage of drugs, and they're all in the range of 100 to 200 milligrams twice a day. So we're working off that model because there hasn't been any human publications on it, and that seems to be working fantastic. But so far I do only grown-ups with it.
Right.
But I know the first autistic moms have gone away, the broke ones in Germany, where I told them about it, where they just don't have any funds left, and they go off that dose as a grown-up dose, 200 milligrams twice a day, and then the 460-pound person, and then go down. If you have somebody that wants to try it out, that's definitely in the safe range.
Right. The two variables that I feel like I've honed in on that I think are holding some of these people back that are actually having great success with the protocol and the enemas and getting a ton of worms out, but they're at 16 months and 2 years and they're still getting these 4-foot worms out, and they're just not changing the milieu. And the two variables it seems like aren't budging are overall body temperature and being too low, and the stomach acid being too high, which is something Kalker mentioned. So
I've read your thing on that, and I totally agree with that.
Okay.
This is totally, and we've I just read a few months ago, I read this book, not very well written, but on type 2 hypothyroidism.
Okay.
And it was really important reading for me, just kind of reasserting what Keith, told us
Totally.
years ago, about the body temperature, except, as a doctor, I have more possibilities of bringing the temperature up.
Right.
We're throwing in like a huge dose of selenium. We do glucose iodine solution, but I found a new way of doing that. It's an offshoot of something I learned 20 years ago.
Okay.
By rubbing it into the perineum of the kids.
Okay.
It instantly normalizes not just the thyroid, but it normalizes all the other hormones. The testosterone comes down, the progesterone goes up, the DHEA normalizes.
Wow.
It's a fantastic tool, So it's just in a like 4 or 5 year old child, it's just one drop of glucose iodine rubbed into the perineum.
Okay.
And it does a miracle with the body temperature.
Wow. That's huge. Because and the approach that I was such, because you can't put them in a sauna because they have the worm burden so high, and the worms get so pissed that they go into huge Herxheimer. So you can't even go near a sauna. But that little light relief red diode infrared it's just a blue pad you can just put anywhere. We've been having kids put it on their stomach and on their lungs, which seems to be the two places that the eggs are traveling through pre-hatch. You can get those areas up to 99.4. It's not that high at all. You can sacrifice those eggs, and a whole generation doesn't make it to full worm stage.
Yeah. Well, there's also, you need to know about the alcohol inhalation. Did I ever teach you that?
No.
Oh, that's from Larry Klapau. Larry Klapau is a guy the biologist who discovered the lungworm.
Okay.
Called Virus Strongylus klapaui, and he developed a treatment for it. And he found that ivermectin was the only drug that hits the larval stages in the lung, and not only for lungworm, but also for Ascaris and other creatures that travel through the lung.
Okay.
It's very, very specific to ivermectin. unusual drug. It's soil bacteria create ivermectin to defend themselves against other invaders that invade the soil. So healthy soil, like the farming soil that's kind of rich and has that rich smell,
Okay.
that's ivermectin.
Okay.
So it's a very, very, very non-toxic drug, and that's the only one that hits the larval stages of the lung. And then Larry Klinghardt did the research on this by inhaling every day for 20 minutes pure alcohol.
Oh wow.
It completely kills the stages, and Christine again has the protocol for that.
Okay.
Or Larry's, or Andre. You're in contact with Andriana? Do you have her phone number?
Sure.
Because Andriana works, twice a month or so. She goes flash to Santa Rosa.
Okay.
To Gary Gordon's office.
Oh wow. Okay.
Gary Gordon is sort of like the outlet for Larry Klinghardt, who is the biologist who discovered all this.
Okay.
And
so do they just nebulize it then? They just put potato vodka in a nebulizer straight up and nebulize it?
Yeah. But I don't remember if the girls in my office know that. I don't know if there was a special source of it that has to be especially clean, or if it's just something you can get in any pharmacy.
Okay.
Well, but these are all things that need to be communicated. Like none of them. Nobody ever asked me for advice. They kind of know that I've been out there, but.
I tried to make that happen, and I gave the best resources on the planet access, and it just shriveled up and died. It just absolutely shriveled up, and it's so frustrating because I hear about all the ones on the outside of the loop, the ones that didn't do well, the ones that, and there's this one mom who has a child very, very similar to, who, when we were getting ready to start the protocol, I called to see if she wanted to do it with us, if she hadn't heard about it, or if she was already doing it. And he's a lot like this, been doing fantastic utilizing MMS, but here's the difference. She's doing it pretty much exactly the way with the adaptations. She didn't take away the supplements that were working for him. She didn't subtract things at all. She just slowly went up on the oral, always staying below a Herxheimer reaction, ended up staying at 8 drops, even though he's probably 120 pounds, but does 2 and 3 enemas every single day, and every single time gets worms out. So the tool, it makes me think of like building a house with a hammer. It's great for a lot of it, but then there's a point where a screwdriver makes sense. And it seems like nobody wants to switch to the screwdriver.
Absolutely. But anyway, that's very similar to what we do. We work really, really big on the enemas, but very low key on the oral MMS.
Right.
And we only use the hydrochloric acid as an activator. We never use the citric acid in the autistic kids. It's just there's been too many problems just on the citric acid.
Okay.
And we never take them off stuff that has worked for them. And in fact, when we're testing it, they really isn't a con. The stupid MMS works for 20 minutes at best.
Yeah.
And then it's done its job. And you can easily, after 20 minutes, give you antioxidants without taking the effect away from the MMS. So this is just, these guys have some naive ideas out there that unfortunately are sort of always in danger to become a religion for a while.
For example, I have been bugging her about trying to incorporate some ketosis into this whole thing, because it makes sense what these kids are struggling to stop feeding them. You can't go gluten-free, casein-free, soy-free, and then sub everything out to crap carbs from a different genre, and think, how can we really hone in on a protocol that people can do, that recognizes the value of enemas, that recognizes the value of getting the total body burden of pathogens down, that you have to upregulate the body temperature, that you have to get the pH of the stomach down. And that was the other thing that I was really honing in on, was the concept of this yin and yang, day and night, with the day being really sort of this acid-rich, digesting food, chlorine dioxide, oxide, oxidizing, doing vibration with oxygen, just all these oxidizing things for a good 8 hours to 12 hours during the day, and then just completely switching gears to the flip side where it's all the earthing and the antioxidant, because the protocols that have worked so well with these bugs are the ones where you're constantly changing it up.
Then I have a question.
Sure.
With the oxygen thing, you sort of, we've really since the last summit, since meeting Sargent again, I started encouraging people again to go back to the masking.
Yes, absolutely.
And we're seeing really some fabulous results with that.
Okay.
That sort of, I think, has to be brought out more to the forefront.
Absolutely.
And I think that's something where you have a video on that sort of on your website.
I do. We have a video demonstrating it that I had Sargent do with Carrie the last day they were here. But there's some energetic force keeping that from coming to the forefront, because that was the 6th time through 11 summits that I've had the masking technique presented. And it just, you know what I mean? So we need to figure out what's holding all that back.
One of the things that we don't have is a good supply of the plastic bags.
But once you switch to the actual oxygen mask that you can get at any pharmacy, and you just put the Ziploc on the outside, anybody can get that. And I'll send you the video where he demonstrates exactly how to do that with Carrie, because I do think that's powerful. But I also think you need to get yourself a little vibromat, or if you already have the vibration, the big honking expensive one, and get your oxygen concentrator next to it and start having them do it with oxygen. The data on that's pretty clear that it's competing with hyperbaric.
Oh, really?
Yes.
We do have a body vibration machine.
So you just need to pull out an oxygen concentrator, and you can get them on eBay, because these people are on them before they die, and then the families don't know what they are, and they sell them for $100. So it's just, you could get an oxygen concentrator in it. And if you don't have the big vibrational thing, you can get these vibromats, which just vibrates your feet, or if you lay on it, or whatever body part you put on it. I almost think you could have people lay on their stomach doing the oxygen, because the 2 key places are the lungs and the stomach that you're trying to kind of vibrate. I always think of these critters in this hotel, and I'm like, okay, how can I make you unhappy enough to move? And when you move, what am I going to do with you there? It's sort of the visual.
The way I found out a fantastic new treatment for the lungs, it's not just for asthma in kids, that is absolutely curative for asthma, but also for adult disease of the lungs. And everybody with parasites has trouble oxygenating the blood.
Right.
It's called the beehive inhalation.
Okay.
It's basically doing in the back of a beehive. They're drilling a hole big enough to put a plastic breathing tube in, and then put it through to a breathing mask, and you breathe in the inner air of the beehive for 20 minutes to half an hour every day for 10 days in a row, and it cures pretty much every lung disease, including lung cancer. It's absolutely amazing. I've attended a meeting in Vienna on it a couple of weeks ago.
Wow.
And if you keep that in mind, if you ever have, like in your field or amongst moms, anybody with kids, that where asthma is in the equation,
right?
This cures it. 10 days, and all you need to do have a friendly beekeeper in the neighborhood.
We have a beekeeper next door, but 99.9% of people would be like, where do I get a beehive? The thing we do for asthma is Jim's Respade, which is nebulized hydrogen peroxide with his nano silver in it, and then Keith's Aspetrol, which basically clumps up all the mucus, and it just comes out in chunks. And between those 2 things, we have yet to have an asthma person that it doesn't rectify, because it just kind of cleans it out. So this other piece with this acid of the stomach, and I know there's all kinds of things to prime the acid with the food, but one of the big mistakes that I think they're making with this protocol is they're doing the CD water and ocean water in the same sort of rhythm. So what's happening is you're doing this highly acid, and then right about the time you're going to eat, you start with this highly alkalizing ocean water. And to me, it makes sense to reserve the entire day for oxidizing, and then the entire night plus however long makes sense for alkalizing. And while you're doing this highly acidifying stage with your food in there, you prime that pump as well with the hydrochloric acid, with the TMG. Keith has been sending me all this stuff on TMG with this one doctor out of Orange County who's doing this laser enhanced TMG. Have you heard of it? Have you seen? I'll send you the link for that too. It looks amazing. And he's the one with the cell food RNA DNA, which also, so I'm trying to hone in on what are the very, very few supplements that you would do with a oral CD way below your Herxheimer with the MMS enemas, but only when that makes sense. The other data point that I'm resonating with is if you are pushing out parasites, they're high in ammonia. It makes sense to lower your protein intake when you're doing a parasite protocol because they're competing for the urea cycle. Doesn't that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's just some nuance, and I'm going to try to summarize them all to get to you because I think the goal it needs to be for you to finalize sort of a basic approach to this whole thing. That
we should write a brochure, whatever 15-page brochure. This is our new protocol.
I've noticed another one they deal with a lot is phenylsulfotransferase enzyme deficiency, where they got the hot red ears and the hot red cheeks.
Yeah.
But they don't know then that they have to lower the phenols and switch from a CD bath to an Epsom salt bath because they still think even a magnesium bath is somehow feeding the parasites. So they're shunning for like one of Keith's favorite tools, and it's an amazing tool, is that oxidizing magnesium, where you swallow it and then you swallow down some citric acid or some orange juice or lemon juice or even HCl would work to activate the magnesium, and it basically blows up. It's like the scrubbing bubbles version of a CD is what I like to think of it. And they won't use it. So these kids are getting super constipated and they just do more CD, more ocean water, more of everything they were already doing instead of going, okay, you know what, we got to take a break here. Let's use this magnesium oxide. Because that magnesium is not filling the parasite. That is a Trojan horse. And you got to understand that or you skip a huge tool.
I didn't know that. Could you write it up?
Yeah.
The sentences for me and send it to me?
Yeah, I'm going to write it all up, and then if you just write it all back or say, I agree with this, this, and this, I'll just get it out there.
Yeah, the CD tolerance depends on that people can children still have the ability to respond to the oxidative challenge with antioxidative response.
Right.
And that's a whole complex part of biochemistry.
Right.
And the kids that can do that, they do well on it. The ones that don't, they don't. And to predict that, of course I use muscle testing, but I think laboratory-wise, it would be the old terrain analysis. You probably know that when you retake the saliva, the urine, and some other, I think, blood, and examine it for conductivity and for the pH, and for the oxygen content, all that. Like you examine it as if it would be soil.
Right.
And then it gives you on the balance of oxidative and reductive. It places you somewhere on a scale from 0 to 100. You should be at 50, so in the midpoint.
Right.
Where it's easy for you. If you have an oxidative challenge, you can reduce it, and if you have a reductive challenge, you can oxidize it.
Right.
And my German colleagues use some equipment that's available over there to determine where that is, and if somebody is too much stuck on the oxidative side, they're not allowed to use any form of oxygen therapy, including CT.
Right.
And so they were able to some degree to predict who's going to do well with the CD and who not.
I really do think we could figure it out somehow with pH and challenge tests.
I think so too.
Yeah. Or even heart rate variability. We always forget our good old friend heart rate variability. But just to give you some data on the docs that were here, one doc got to 4 drops, felt great until he got to 4 drops, and then had 4 days of pretty much manic brain overstimulation, and was just pretty much had to ride 4-day sort of manic at 4 drops. Uber healthy doctor that you and I know well. And then there was another one, not a doctor, who got up to, I think, 6 drops and got a day-long migraine headache, and then didn't do it for about a week, and then went back to it, and then by the time he got to 4 drops, it just gave him super brain clarity. 3 of us are doing just 1 drop per day, go up as long as nobody has any negative response. The first day, we were all really tired. It was kind of bizarre. But then after that, we've just gone up a drop a day. We're on 17 now. We haven't really seen anything either way. With a little bit more movement, but our goal is not to get that high, but rather to figure out, I'm looking at it almost like you would a bowel tolerance on vitamin C. Like, I think if you push it to the point where you can establish what your upper dosing limit is, then you have a baseline to come down a drop and stay there. But then once you start with the Calca protocol, that could vary tremendously, because now you're pushing ammonia, there's all these antioxidants, and it's just a totally different protocol. One of the most important things of research I was doing, because I was thinking, okay, you've got this worm colony stuck, above your anus, and you're trying to get it out, and they're all coiled up, and they won't come out at super high in ammonia. What chemically works with ammonia? And when I started looking at the oxidizers, hydrogen peroxide, chlorine dioxide, all that stuff, ammonia is super, super, super alkaline, and with chlorine, it blows up. It like explodes. But with hydrogen peroxide has that sort of bubbling nature that I thought, well, that might have an interesting impact. So there's just a ton of data to be collected and looked at. But my biggest perseveration is thinking, I think we need to keep acid with acid and alkaline with alkaline. Have the whole day be trying to push that stomach acid back down below 2. And then completely change gears to totally alkaline, getting them tethered. Same with sunlight during the day. Wouldn't sunlight be like exactly paired with oxidizing to match that cycle?
Yeah, it should.
Yeah, so I'm trying to just...
You're actually in an area of the world where you should use that.
Yeah.
Mostly places of the earth where we see the sun 3 days a year.
But I think at one point we talked about whether or not, once we got to like the $10,000 mark, but maybe buy sun lamp. Because we were not designed to be indoors all day. We may not understand everything it does, but we should at least understand that the human body was designed to be in the sun. And now it's just troubleshooting around. And most of it's symptomology. When they're showing hyperammonemia, you go for ammonia. When you're showing this red cheeks, red ears, you go for the phenol piece. When their temperature's low, you gotta do something to at least upgrade the temperature in the stomach and the chest while the eggs are passing through there at the full moon cycles.
What are you doing for the phenol piece?
You just avoid phenols and you do Epsom salt baths. It's just getting sulfur in the body. But we need to talk to Keith about it, because Keith is huge on MSM. He does not have anybody who doesn't upregulate the resting body temperature, and he doesn't have anybody who doesn't do MSM. A ton of it. And so they're avoiding all of that stuff and avoiding, the magnesium. So I want to have sort of like, okay, here's the protocol that you might be considering. Here are the points where you might want to consider going left or right, like with PST, like with ammonia, like with the like not having a bowel movement. You can't keep going.
Well, don't you try to write it all up and send it to me?
I am.
Back to you with my comments or thoughts.
Yeah, it's a pretty high priority.
So they're all underestimating the adaptability of these creatures. So if you do the same treatment over and over, the bugs, or at least a sufficient subspecies, will learn how to live in the presence of this stuff, and then they smile back at you you should stop it, but you have to add in a substantial other tweak, and kills a lot of bugs, and then sort of puts an end to any of that spook rather than waiting for 3 years, before it ends. So it just means that, that none of these,
Now this, I recorded this so I could take good notes. If I edit everything out that has any problem in it, do you care if I let people listen to this conversation?
of course.
Okay. So I'll write up more of this. If you look at what I've already sent you, it's a great proportion of this, but I'll write the rest of it more succinct and see if we can. Then are you fine then if Christina sends me that stuff and we get that out to everybody too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Send me a brief email with your wish list.
Okay.
And then I can just simply forward it to her, then I know it doesn't get lost that way.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So that's kind of, there's a lot of variables around this that I think if we just got people thinking a little bit differently, they would be able to lower the pH of their stomach, and they would be able to increase their body temperature. And then instead of having to do 3 years of this protocol, they do 8 months with it a little bit different.
Yeah.
That's my thought.
The thing that people, this is the last comment, when people do, like, when they're down to 2 animals a day and they're taking all the stuff and they're pooping out worms, it simply means that on this protocol, the worms are still outperforming the killing.
Absolutely.
And it just simply means that the protocol, if this goes on for 4 months, I'm fine with it. But if after 4 months they're still pooping out worms with every animal they do, then the worms are simply turned on. They're using up a huge amount of nutrients from the host to do this incredible outperforming.
Right.
And so the answer to that is that they need to be on a conventional antiparasitic drug, or at least on the CoQ10, on the sophisticated mix, of ginger and curcumin and black pepper and a few other things, some other things in there, to stop the reproduction of the creatures, or what's also been forgotten is the Sputnik, the little metal capsule from Russia, the pulses and electromagnetic pulse, you swallow it and then it pulses its way all the way down to, sometimes it's just garlic, and sometimes it's just curcumin, sometimes it's a ginger, sometimes it's a medical drugs.
I think those things would in fact kill off 99% of what's left, but as long as your stomach acid is still above 2 and your body temperature is still below 98, and I wrote an analogy about this. I'm like, you can have a lice fairy come out to your house when people have lice and get every last nit and be done with lice. You can't do that in the stomach. You can't do that in the inside.
We do the Barnes test on everyone. That's measuring the wake-up temperature under the left axilla every morning for 10 minutes.
Okay.
With a non-digital thermometer, either mercury or alcohol-based thermometer.
Right.
And the temperature needs to be above 97.8. And if it's not there, for each 0.2 drop in temperature, the number of pathogens in the body doubles every 0.2 drop. And so the body temperature is just as important as Keith said. Now, there is, his method may not be the most easy one, and not everybody can tolerate iodine. There's a good number of people become allergic to it. That's what we went through, the transdermal use of it. That's fantastic.
Right.
The perennial use of the Rugel's iodine, but they need selenium, they need lithium, they need all the cofactors, for the thyroid to make thyroid, and then many of them need either synthetic or natural thyroid, some T4 and some T3. But until the temperature is up, we realize also you have no chance with the parasites. They keep on producing. The temperature goes down from the top to the bottom. You can sometimes also see that. One way of diagnosing parasites is you measure the temperature in the mouth and in the rectum.
Okay.
And if it's cold colder in the rectum than in the mouth. They got very well adapted parasites that are down-regulating the body temperature.
Oh, wow, okay.
The rectum should be higher than the mouth,
Okay.
colder than the mouth. And colder means they're immune modulating your whole gut and down-regulating all the bug killing strategies that the body has left. So it's it's an old way of diagnosing parasites. It's with the red ears, it's a perioral pallor, the paleness around the mouth, the red ears, and then the temperature gradient from mouth to bottom. Let's do a little bit more on email.
Yeah. The only other thing I think they really need to be doing until they can get the body temperature up is with the full moon cycle, choosing the right time to either get in a sauna or do a heating pad, but do something to heat it up to 99 so you kill the larva.
And simple things, like wearing warm socks, ski socks.
Yeah.
It's huge of getting the body temperature up, or wearing a hat. These things are huge.
Yeah.
And
they don't temperature modulate well, so that works well because they can't modulate well. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Dana.
Tell Danielle I said hi. Thank you so much. I'll be sending emails.
Have a blessed Sunday.
You too. Okay, love you. Bye-bye. Oh, wow. Thanks for bearing with that.